But can I just say one thing, which is I think we're missing the bigger picture here, which is after President Trump fired James Comey, I said that we are all going through a slow motion, multi-month Saturday Night Massacre, where when President Nixon fired, was it Leon Jaworski, the special counsel looking into Watergate, and there was a whole bloodbath that went through with the Attorney General Elliot Richardson resigning, and then the Deputy Attorney General resigning, et cetera. And ultimately Robert Bork, I believe, was the one who fired Jaworski. That was called the Saturday Night Massacre for people who don't remember.
Okay, what I'm about to tell you is genuinely alarming. And I don't use that word lightly because we cover a lot of alarming things on this channel, and I try to be careful about not overstating things. But this story is different. This story is about the systematic dismantling of legal oversight within the United States military, the largest and most powerful fighting force on the entire planet. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has been waging a war not against foreign enemies, not against terrorist organizations, not against hostile nations that threaten American interests, but against the military's own lawyers, the Judge Advocates General, the JAGs, the people whose entire job, whose entire reason for existing within the military structure is to make sure that when American troops go into battle, they're following the law, they're not committing war crimes, they're operating within the rules of engagement that protect both our soldiers and innocent civilians. And Hegseth has been firing them, sidelining them, pushing them out of their positions, calling them crude names in his own book. And now there's major pushback happening inside the Pentagon that is rocking his entire approach to military legal oversight and creating serious problems for the administration. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
And it was the president trying to, President Nixon at the time, get away from any sort of accountability from the Justice Department. President Trump has been doing that in slow motion. I'm not saying he's responsible for anything like what happened under Watergate. We have no idea what happened and what Mueller will turn up, and maybe he'll turn up nothing. But it has been a slow motion Saturday Night Massacre, starting with the firing of James Comey and now with the firing of the Attorney General.
Everybody, hold on. The difference is, hold on one moment. Laura Jarrett, our Justice Department reporter, is getting some more information. What else are you learning, Laura?
Hey there, Wolf. I just wanted to update you as we're learning more and more about how all of this went down this morning. I'm now told by a senior administration official that the president did not even call the Attorney General to fire him or ask for his resignation himself.
Let me be very clear about what we're talking about here, because this isn't some abstract bureaucratic dispute about organizational charts or who reports to whom in the Pentagon hierarchy. This is about whether the United States military operates under the rule of law or whether commanders can just do whatever they want without anyone checking whether it's actually legal. Military lawyers have served a critical function for decades, for generations, actually going back to the founding of the JAG Corps. They advise commanders on the legality of operations before those operations happen, not after when it's too late. They investigate allegations of misconduct when things go wrong. They ensure that American troops follow the laws of armed conflict that distinguish legitimate military action from war crimes. They protect our soldiers from being ordered to do things that could get them prosecuted in international courts or face criminal charges under military law. That system of legal oversight exists for incredibly important reasons that were learned through hard experience. And Pete Hegseth apparently wants to tear it apart because he thinks military lawyers are getting in the way of what he wants to do. Since February 2025, just weeks after taking office, Hegseth has dismissed top judges across multiple branches of the military in what can only be described as a systematic purge. The Army's top judge advocate gone, fired, removed from their position. The Air Force's senior military lawyer also gone. Other senior legal officials across the Pentagon have been sidelined, pushed out of the decision-making process where they used to play a central role, replaced with people who are more aligned with what Trump and Hegseth want to accomplish without legal obstacles. And the stated reason for all of this, Hegseth has complained repeatedly and publicly about what he calls roadblocks created by excessive rules of engagement. He's expressed deep frustration with investigations into alleged misconduct that he deemed absurd and unnecessary. He's made it abundantly clear that he sees military lawyers not as essential safeguards protecting troops and upholding American values, but as obstacles and impediments to getting things done the way he wants them done. And if you've read his 2024 book, you know exactly how he feels about these attorneys and their role in the military. He called them jagoffs. That's his actual term for the Judge Advocates General, the highly trained legal professionals who dedicate their careers to military service. JAG-offs, a crude insult, a play on the JAG acronym, directed at the legal professionals who have spent years studying military law and the laws of armed conflict, who have deployed alongside troops to provide real-time legal guidance in combat situations, who have worked to ensure that American military operations meet the highest legal and ethical standards, and the man who is now Defense Secretary thinks they're jag-offs who get in the way. That tells you everything you need to know about his attitude toward legal oversight. And now, the backlash is hitting hard. Military attorneys and defense experts across the entire ideological spectrum are warning that what Hegseth is doing is incredibly dangerous and could have catastrophic consequences. They're saying that sidelining legal counsel fundamentally undermines the rule of law within the military. They're warning that it jeopardizes troop discipline, because when soldiers don't trust that there's proper legal oversight of the orders they receive, they start questioning everything and unit cohesion breaks down. They're raising urgent alarms about the risk of illegal warfare conduct allegations, situations where American troops could be accused of war crimes because no one was there to tell commanders that what they were planning crossed legal lines that should never be crossed. All right, let's really dig into what's happening at the Pentagon, because this story has layers that most people don't fully appreciate, and the mainstream coverage often misses the full significance. The role of military lawyers in the American Armed Forces is absolutely crucial to how we fight wars and conduct military operations. And what Hegseth is doing threatens to undermine decades of institutional norms that have kept our military both effective and accountable to the law. So let me walk you through the history, the current crisis, and why the pushback from military attorneys represents such a significant moment in the life of this administration. First, let's understand what Judge Advocates General actually do on a daily basis and why they matter so much to military operations. The JAG Corps exists in every branch of the military: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard. These are lawyers who have gone through law school, passed the bar exam, and then received extensive specialized military legal training on top of their civilian legal education. They serve in a dual capacity that's actually quite unique in the legal profession. On one hand, they're military officers subject to the chain of command, just like everyone else who wears the uniform. They follow orders, they deploy overseas, they serve in combat zones. On the other hand, they have a unique and critical responsibility to provide independent legal advice, even when that advice is inconvenient or unwelcome for commanders who want to do something that might be legally questionable. It's a difficult balance to strike, and it requires lawyers who have both legal expertise and the moral courage to speak up when something isn't right. But for generations, the system has worked remarkably well. Commanders get legal input before making major decisions about operations. Military actions are planned with an understanding of what the law allows and what it prohibits. And when things go wrong, when there are allegations of misconduct or violations of the laws of war, military lawyers conduct investigations and ensure that accountability happens. The laws of armed conflict are extraordinarily complex and would be impossible for any commander to master without expert guidance. They involve international treaties that the United States has signed and ratified over many decades. They involve the Geneva Conventions, which govern the treatment of prisoners and civilians during wartime. They involve the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is the criminal law system that applies to all military personnel. They involve rules of engagement that vary by theater and mission and change based on specific operational context. They involve a web of legal requirements and prohibitions that would take years of specialized study to fully understand. That's exactly what JAGs provide. They're not there to block military operations or make commanders' lives difficult. They're there to ensure those operations stay within legal boundaries that protect American troops from prosecution in international tribunals, that maintain our credibility with allies who expect us to follow the same rules we demand of others, and that distinguish a lawful professional military from one that commits atrocities. Without that legal oversight, commanders are essentially flying blind through incredibly complex legal terrain, and the consequences of getting it wrong can be absolutely catastrophic for individual soldiers who might face criminal charges, for military missions that might be compromised, and for Americans standing in the world. Pete Hegseth doesn't see it that way at all. He's made his views on military lawyers abundantly clear throughout his career as a commentator, and especially in his 2024 book that he published before joining the administration. He views JAGs as bureaucratic obstacles who tie commanders' hands with excessive caution and prevent them from prosecuting wars the way he thinks they should be prosecuted. He's complained bitterly and repeatedly about rules of engagement that he considers too restrictive and that protect civilians in ways he finds frustrating. He's criticized investigations into alleged misconduct by American troops as witch hunts that demoralize the force and undermine unit cohesion. And most infamously, he used the term jag-offs to describe these legal professionals, a crude play on the JAG acronym that reveals his fundamental contempt for what they do and the role they serve. This isn't someone who respects the essential function of legal oversight in military operations. This is someone who sees lawyers as enemies to be defeated and obstacles to be removed. And since taking office as Defense Secretary in January 2025, he's been acting on those views with systematic and aggressive determination. The firings started in February, just weeks after the administration began, and they haven't stopped since. Top JAGs in the Army and Air Force were among the first to be dismissed. The stated reasons for individual terminations have varied, but the pattern has been unmistakably clear to anyone paying attention. Military lawyers who had established reputations for providing truly independent legal advice, for pushing back when necessary against plans that crossed legal lines, for taking their oversight role seriously even when it made them unpopular. Those were exactly the ones being targeted for removal. In their place, new legal advisors have been installed throughout the Pentagon structure. Pentagon insiders describe these replacements as people who are much more aligned with administration policies and much less likely to raise uncomfortable objections to questionable orders. The independent legal voice that commanders relied on for honest guidance is being systematically silenced and replaced with people who will just say yes to whatever the administration wants. The sidelining of military lawyers who haven't been outright fired has been just as damaging to the system as the firings themselves. Military attorneys who remain in their positions report being excluded from meetings where they would normally participate and provide input. They describe being cut out of the planning process for operations where their legal expertise would be essential. They talk about orders being issued without proper legal review or being reviewed only after the fact when it's already too late to change course or raise objections. One Pentagon insider told reporters that there's a pervasive sense of uncertainty throughout the building about what's legal anymore because the normal channels for getting reliable legal guidance have been completely disrupted. Commanders who genuinely want to do the right thing, who want to follow the law and operate ethically, don't know who to ask for guidance or whether the advice they receive can be trusted to be independent rather than politically motivated. And here's where this gets really dangerous from a national security and operational perspective. The United States is not at peace right now. American forces are deployed around the world in various capacities. There are ongoing operations in multiple regions that involve the use or potential use of military force. There are tensions with various adversaries that could escalate quickly and require rapid military response. Just in recent weeks, there have been serious controversies about military operations that raise significant legal questions requiring expert analysis, reports about boat strikes that may have violated legal standards, threats regarding Venezuela and potential military action, operations that involve the use of force in ways that absolutely require careful legal analysis before they're executed. And at exactly this moment, when legal guidance is most critical and most needed, the Defense Secretary is actively undermining the system that provides that guidance. He's creating an environment where commanders might issue orders without fully understanding the legal implications of what they're directing, where troops might carry out missions that violate the laws of armed conflict without anyone flagging the problem in advance, where the United States could end up accused of war crimes on the international stage because no one was there to say, wait, we absolutely cannot do this. All right, let's break this down into the key points everyone needs to understand about Hegseth's war on military lawyers and why the pushback from the JAG community represents such a significant development. Because this isn't just inside baseball about Pentagon personnel decisions or bureaucratic shuffling. This is about whether the United States military will continue to operate under the rule of law or whether we're entering a dangerous new era where commanders can do whatever they want without meaningful legal oversight or accountability. Point number one, the systematic removal of independent military lawyers represents a fundamental threat to legal accountability within the armed forces and could have consequences that last for decades. For generations, the JAG Corps has served as an internal check on military power. They've ensured that operations comply with the laws of armed conflict before those operations are executed. They've protected troops from being ordered to commit illegal acts that could result in criminal prosecution. They've maintained the United States' credibility as a nation that follows international law even during the fog and chaos of wartime. Hegseth is dismantling that entire system, not because it failed to serve its purpose, but precisely because it worked too well for his taste. It told commanders things they didn't want to hear. It blocked operations that would have been illegal under domestic and international law. It held people accountable when they crossed lines that should never be crossed. And for Hegseth, that's a problem to be eliminated rather than a feature to be preserved and strengthened. Point number two, this creates real and immediate operational risks for American troops serving in the field right now today. When legal oversight is compromised or removed, soldiers are put in impossible situations through no fault of their own. They might receive orders that violate the laws of armed conflict without having any way to know that those orders are illegal. They might carry out missions that could result in war crimes, charges being filed against them, charges that will fall on the individual troops who follow orders rather than on the commanders who issued those illegal orders in the first place. They might find themselves in situations where they're being asked to do things that their training tells them are wrong, but without the legal backing and institutional support to refuse. The people most harmed by Hegseth's war on military lawyers aren't bureaucrats sitting in comfortable offices in Washington. They're the men and women in uniform who depend on proper legal guidance to navigate incredibly complex and dangerous situations. By removing that guidance, Hegseth is failing the troops he claims to support and care about. Point number 3, the pushback from military attorneys signals that there are real limits to how much institutional destruction the Pentagon will tolerate, even from a defense secretary appointed by the president. The JAG community is not going quietly into the night. Retired military lawyers who spent decades serving their country have been speaking out publicly about the dangers of what Hegseth is doing. Current attorneys, while significantly constrained by their active duty positions and chain of command obligations, have reportedly been documenting their concerns through official channels and creating paper trails. Defense experts and legal scholars from across the political spectrum are warning about the consequences of removing legal oversight from military operations. This represents a significant institutional response to what Hegseth is trying to accomplish. The military legal community has deep roots and strong traditions going back generations. They understand their essential role in maintaining a lawful military, and they're not willing to see it destroyed without putting up a serious fight. The setbacks Hegseth is facing, the criticism, the resistance, the pushback, show that even in an administration that demands total and unquestioning loyalty, some institutions have enough backbone and institutional integrity to push back against destruction. Point number 4, this pattern of removing independent legal oversight connects directly to everything else going wrong across the Trump administration right now. The DOJ chaos with collapsed prosecutions and mass resignations and allegations of document destruction, the FBI dysfunction under Kash Patel with erratic testimony and blocked investigations and Epstein file controversies, the court defeats on immigration policies and birthright citizenship and deportation flights. All of these problems share a common root cause: the systematic removal of people who provide independent judgment and their replacement with political loyalists who won't question anything the administration wants to do. When you fire everyone who might tell you no, when you remove everyone who might flag a problem before it becomes a disaster, you end up making catastrophic mistakes because no one is left to warn you. The administration is learning this lesson the hard way across multiple agencies simultaneously, but they don't seem to be adjusting their approach based on the failures. They just keep purging anyone who shows independence or raises concerns, and then acting shocked and surprised when things go terribly wrong. Now, what happens next with the Pentagon legal situation? In the short term, expect the tension between Hegseth and the military legal community to continue and possibly escalate further. There are likely to be more firings and more forced resignations as the secretary continues his systematic purge of independent voices. There will be more public criticism from retired military lawyers and defense experts who feel obligated to speak out. There may be congressional hearings as lawmakers from both parties demand answers about what's happening to legal oversight at the Pentagon and whether American troops are being put at risk. The situation is highly unstable and virtually certain to produce more controversy and more problems in the coming weeks and months. In the medium term, watch carefully for specific incidents where the lack of proper legal oversight leads to serious problems that can't be ignored. Operations that go wrong because no one with legal expertise flagged the issues in advance. Allegations of misconduct that weren't caught and prevented because the review processes were compromised or eliminated. International incidents that damage American credibility because commanders weren't properly advised on the laws of armed conflict before acting. These kinds of problems are almost inevitable when you remove the safeguards that exist specifically to prevent them. And when they happen, Hegseth will face very serious questions about whether his war on military lawyers created the conditions for failure. In the long term, this is really about the fundamental character of the American military and what kind of institution it's going to be going forward. Are we a force that operates under the rule of law with proper accountability, or are we something else entirely? Are we a military that holds itself to the highest legal and ethical standards and investigates misconduct seriously, or one that covers up problems and protects wrongdoers? The answers to those questions have profound implications, not just for military effectiveness in combat, but for American democracy itself. A military without meaningful legal oversight is a military that can be abused and misused by political leaders for improper purposes. It's a military that might follow clearly illegal orders without anyone raising objections. It's a military that could potentially threaten the constitutional order itself if its commanders decide the law simply doesn't apply to them or their actions. The guardrails Hegseth is removing exist for very good reasons that were learned through hard and painful experience. And we may not fully appreciate the importance of those reasons until the guardrails are completely gone. And here's the political dimension that should worry Republicans heading into the 2026 midterm elections. Military families vote in large numbers, veterans vote in large numbers, people who care deeply about the rule of law and proper military conduct vote. And what Hegseth is doing, calling dedicated military lawyers jagoffs in print, firing experienced jags who provided essential guidance, creating chaos and legal oversight throughout the Pentagon. That's simply not popular with the military community that Republicans have traditionally counted on for support. These are people who have served their country honorably in uniform. They understand from direct personal experience why legal oversight matters and what happens when it breaks down. They've seen the consequences of lawless behavior in military contexts, and they're watching Hegseth systematically tear apart institutions that they respect and depend on. If the administration thinks there's no political cost to waging war on military lawyers, they may be very surprised by how many people care deeply about this issue and will remember it clearly when they vote. All right, that's going to do it for this one. This is a story that's going to keep developing as the tensions at the Pentagon continue to play out over the coming months. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think about this situation. Is Hegseth right that military lawyers have been too restrictive and need to be reined in? Or is he making a dangerous and potentially catastrophic mistake by removing essential legal oversight? Should Congress intervene to protect the independence of military legal counsel? I genuinely want to hear your perspective on this. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell because there's so much happening right now. The Pentagon chaos is just one piece of the broader institutional meltdown we're witnessing across the entire federal government, and you need to stay informed about all of it. Until then, keep paying attention, keep asking the hard questions, and I'll see you in the next one.